Good morning, everyone. Please give your attention for the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang mag-ibig, pero sa sinakalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang binirang, kuya ka ng mag-ibig, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng bagaw, ay ginagang tulad, awit sa pagkayang minamahal, ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iindig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pamay di magtitinig, lupa ng araw ng walhabit pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya ng pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
As we begin our summit, let's have a moment of silence to offer our activities and conversations for the next 2 days, that they may be fruitful and bring solidarity towards a more sustainable future for all. To start our exciting day, let's welcome our host, Tim Daniels, Consultant for Investor Relations and Sustainability at SM Investments, and Dr. Ali Adige, Head of ASEAN Region Hub for Global Reporting Initiative.
Welcome back to day 2 of the ASEAN GRI-SM Sustainability Summit. And we'd like to welcome back the 1,000 guests that we have on Zoom, and all of our guests who are tuned in via the live stream on SM Investments' social media channels.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Tim. We also would like to thank our speakers, panelists, and moderators for yesterday's successful opening day, and we look forward to a very promising second day.
Again, we would also like to thank Eco Business and Manila Bulletin, who are our media partners for this event.
Yesterday, we learned from Southeast Asia's next generation leaders on how they plan to navigate through the challenges moving forward. I don't know with you, Tim, but I found the discussion yesterday very inspiring and very illuminating. Like I have 4 points that I picked up during the conversation in the morning session. One is that of course, I am optimistic because the future of ASEAN is in the hands of majority of women leaders. And then another one is, it really resonated to me, Cherry and Somsak's point of the importance of collaborative and purposeful leadership, that they define success if they bring their stakeholders along the journey with them. And of course, Emmeline and Mara made a very good point on the importance of education and knowledge sharing, because it gives people informed choices and decisions about their future. And of course, not to forget Mariana's very important point as well, that sustainability should be accessible and affordable. So Karen's question also made me think about my own why. So that's my takeaway from yesterday. What about you, Tim?
Yes, I felt the day very rich throughout both sessions, and lots to reflect on. And we've been told since by many people who are attending that it was a very powerful series of discussions. In the afternoon, we also had really strong insights on the financial issues and, what's needed to happen in the financial sector to facilitate, funding of sustainable developments. And we had a diverse range of speakers, right? We had 2 speakers from regulators. We had Deputy Governor Fanacio from the BSP. We had Lester Lee from the SEC, and they were very keen to talk about the enabling roles, the changes in regulation, and how active actually the regulators are in creating the right landscape and conditions for this. Because then we had players who were either borrowers, or they were lenders, or they were asset managers. We had Walter from BDO, who talked about the need to balance, environmental concerns against also the sustainability trade-offs in the social sector that we sometimes have, but at the same time, the need to fund climate change. We had Ayman, who really talked about how to try and transform banks. Venetia, who gave us a perspective from the asset manager side about what needs to be done and how the case for companies that are making the journey is very, very strong, and a necessity for the asset management sector to really scrutinize what they're doing. Esther and Venetia also gave us a lot of data about the changes and really made the point about how rapidly things are changing. So, we had everybody talk about how things in the last 18 months even are so different from 5 years ago, whether it's the volumes of sustainable financing, whether it's the demand, whether it's the regulations and the environment. So there was a lot of similarity across our speakers, really about the need for change, the speed at which things are changing, and how collaborative everybody needs to be to deliver it.
Yeah,
very powerful.
I hope everyone found the sessions yesterday as informative, as illuminating as we did. And so for today, let's get on our day. We would like to call on His Excellency Alain Gaschen, the Swiss ambassador to the Philippines, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for recalling the headlines of yesterday. Excellency, dear representatives of the governments, business leaders, experts and practitioners, speakers and panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone, and sunny greetings from Manila. It is my great privilege to open this third session of this GRI-SM ASEAN Sustainability Summit entitled The Purpose-Driven Business, Lessons from the Pandemic. We have a lineup of great keynote speakers and panelists, and I very much look forward to inspiring insights and the discussions this morning. I wish to commend the work of the Global Reporting Initiative and SM Investments, their work of convening this e-summit, and their leadership on these crucial issues. Switzerland is proud to support the meaningful work of the GRI, and the Swiss Embassy is happy to team up with SM, our keynote speaker Stephen Tan and his team, for our own empowerment and solidarity project to be launched just a few weeks from now. But before we listen to Stephen, let me share a few thoughts on today's topic. What are the key lessons of the pandemic? I see mainly two. First, that collaboration between the public sector, the private sector, the civil society, and the academe is required. It is desirable, it is doable, and it yields results. And second, that for companies taking care of all their stakeholders, their workers, clients, shareholders, providers, and communities at large is both a good investment and also a sound business model. Now you will ask me, is this new? Isn't this something that we knew before the pandemic? Of course we knew, at least we should have known, but it was at the back of our minds, and now it is just right in front of our eyes. We knew that we need responsible businesses in the 21st century. We knew it for at least 20 years. I recall the Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, calling for the creation of a global compact. That was in 1999 in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum in Davos. We don't get younger, but I remember it well. I was just about to join the foreign services. Since then, many discussions took place in the academe, at the WEF itself, and in the public debate. The old capitalism is flawed, we heard. We need to pay attention to the losers of the globalization because their frustration fuels populism. Or we need a great reset, as Klaus Schwab called it. We need to reinvent capitalism to build back better. Or, as the Nobel Prize Joseph Stiglitz put it, we need a new social contract, a new balance between the market, the state, and the civil society. I like this idea of a new social contract because this brings a Swiss, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, into the debate. Jean-Jacques Rousseau published in 1762 Du Contrat Social, and his book marked history. There were, of course, other theories around the social contract before him and during his time, but his political philosophy is probably the most elaborated, and it comes closest to what I have in mind today. Because of his views on equality, liberty, and the sovereignty of the people, of course, they remain valid to this day. But also because the notion of common interest lies at the core of the social contract as he saw it. An act of both alienation and association creates a moral and collective body, and the general will, some would say today, the rule of law, is the cornerstone of the model. Rousseau was well ahead of his time with his thinking, but not to the point to include the future generation into his model. He would have landed directly in a psychiatric hospital, I guess, would have he done so. Now, after a few centuries have passed, time has come to include this future generation, to give them a say, to build in some solidarity and equity among generations. Professors and thinkers have developed models and concepts about this. The United Nations is heading in this direction. This is clearly the way forward. This has to be what we now call the new normal. Part of my quote for this event was to say that we need to reach a new level of cooperation, a kind of cooperation 4.0. This requires political will, of course, commitment and dedication. It requires both a new mindset and new governance tools. It requires leadership from the public and the private sector. Finally, it requires the new generation of consumers and workers to articulate their expectations and to assume their role of driving force of the transition. I think that they can, I think that they should, and I think that they will. Now, what does this mean for businesses? It means that while it is important to be responsible, it is not good, or not good enough, or not good enough anymore. Business now needs to show purpose and to project meaning. They need to embrace transparency and accountability. Of course, companies still need to earn money. No business is sustainable without profit. In other words, they still need a brain and muscle. However, they must realize that their heart is pumping blood into brain and muscle. So if they want to thrive, they need to show empathy. They need to show that they care for the planet and for their environment, that they care for the people and communities around them, and that for the society they operate in. They must show that they care about their impact on the environment, on the society and the governance system. They need to reflect on that, and they need also to report about it. Now, business can see this through different lenses. They can consider it as a compliance issue because of the growing regulation and precisely the reporting obligations that are put in place. They can see it as a risk or as a threat because they might disappear if they lose their workforce and consumers. Or they can welcome an opportunity because they spot the benefits of a more resilient, a more sustainable, and a more inclusive society. Why they do it is secondary, as long as they take the challenge seriously and act accordingly. So now this sounds very nice, but is it also realistic? Isn't there a risk of non-action? Yes, there is, I'm afraid, unfortunately. As our economies recover and we slowly see light at the end of the tunnel after 2 years of crisis, the risk is that we might be tempted to go back to normal as soon as it is over. Back to business as usual. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's face it, there is no future with that business model. But like Ali, I am optimistic, and that together we can build back better. And I trust that we will feel even more optimistic after listening to our speakers and panelists this morning. Now it's time to give them the floor. I look very much to the fruitful discussion. Thank you for having me once again, and mabuhay.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Gaschen. There is no future in the old business model. Very powerful words. Today, we have invited leaders from different industries to discuss this, to discuss what lessons we can derive from the COVID-19 pandemic experience and how we can move forward with a more targeted purpose towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
Our keynote speaker this morning is Stephen Tan, who is the president of SM Supermalls. He's known for his out-of-the-box approach to excellent customer service and cutting-edge innovation to malling experience, converting malls from simple shopping spaces to dynamic community spaces, bringing people together. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the iconic Stephen Tan.
Good morning, delegates. Thank you for having me here today. The pandemic has been a tremendous learning experience for all of us here at SM Supermalls. We've learned much from the challenges it has posed to our business. But more significantly, the pandemic has been a powerful reminder about the bigger why of our business. Today, I'll be sharing our journey of being a purpose-driven business throughout this pandemic. The mall business is close to my heart. I started out as a mall manager with an intimate view of life in the mall. I steadily worked my way up to bigger responsibilities at SM Supermalls, culminating in my appointment as president in January 2020. During our first operations meeting, pictured here, I remember telling my team that 2020 would be a momentous year. Prophetic words in hindsight as the country went into lockdown 2 months later. I've learned much from working in the mall over the years. For me, one of the most fascinating things about the mall is how it is a microcosm of relationship between business and society. I say this for two reasons. First, it is inside the mall where all kinds of people, businesses, and communities converge. In the mall, you get to witness all the ways these different forces interact with one another. Second, a mall is all about symbiotic relationships. A mall does not succeed on its own. The mall's well-being is closely tied to the well-being of its tenants, customers, workers, and the community it belongs to. Running a mall makes you realize a fundamental truth about modern society. We are all interconnected. A mall does not operate on vacuum. To make the mall's business sustainable over the long term, you have to think of many other people and many other concerns, not just those of your business. You have to make choices that lead to a win-win for as many stakeholders as possible, both internal and external. The pandemic has dramatically reminded us just how much we all depend in one another. Lockdowns and other pandemic restrictions have taken away the everyday routines of our society. And in doing so, they have exposed just how fragile that shared fortunes of individuals, businesses, and communities are. People depend on businesses for income and essentials. Businesses cannot fully function without people to support and power them. Cities cannot thrive if people and business are curtailed. Amidst this context, we at SM Supermalls have a vital role to play. The size and the scale of our business literally impacts millions of lives nationwide. Our 77 malls touch communities all over the country, from north to south. They host 20,000 tenants, most of whom are small to medium-sized businesses that employ an entire network of people. How many people? It has been estimated that nearly 1 million people are employed directly or indirectly by SM Supermalls. Which is why, when the lockdown was first announced in March 2020, my thoughts immediately turned to all the people affected around the country. All the people asking hard questions like, what happens now? Will I still be able to take care of my family? Will we be safe? Not only our employees, but also people like sales clerks, security guards, janitors, garbage haulers, among many others. With business at a standstill, we also took the time to reflect about our purpose, our reason for being. Amidst unprecedented nature of the pandemic and the anxiety and uncertainty surrounding it, what truly matters? Now more than ever, to be of service to people. I would argue, in fact, that service is essential during a pandemic. And the company's assets, resources, and people are all opportunities to be of service in these times. My personal conviction is bolstered by the unique role that the mall play in our society. In the Philippines, malls are arguably a public service. At the most basic level, malls provide access to essential goods, services like food and medicine. But malls also play a broader societal role. They are a barometer of business and consumer confidence. You can tell how the economy is doing just by looking into the mall. Malls are also a symbol of normalcy in abnormal times, such as when typhoons strike. During typhoons, we open our malls to the public as free shelter and refuge from floods, a role made possible by the disaster-resilient design of our malls. In the middle of a pandemic, these roles of a mall becoming even more important. More than ever, we have an obligation to be of service to the public. Service has been our guiding mission throughout the pandemic. How we serve has also been evolving over the past 18 months. In the first few months of the pandemic, our service was focused on immediately responding to the most urgent needs. We began with taking care of our people. Our employees were given their full salaries and frontliners were given financial assistance. We also responded to the lack of public transport by providing shuttle service vehicles to those who needed to work at the malls. Next, our tenant partners. We deeply value our partnership with tenants. It is a long-term relationship to be nurtured and protected in good times and bad. No business can be sustainable without long-term relationships. We spontaneously gave all 20,000 of our tenants rental relief during the time they were closed for business, even without being asked or required by the government to do so. We did this to ensure that they would be able to focus on taking care of their own employees. We moved quickly to be of service to medical communities and barangays. We donated over 400 million worth of hospital supplies such as ventilators, testing kits, face masks, shields, and PPEs to over 100 hospitals nationwide, while building quarantine facilities in several locations across the country. We also packed and distributed over 100,000 bags of relief goods to those who needed it most. We continued to serve our customers by opening up essential services and shops while adhering to strict government health and safety regulations. We also quickly innovated so we could better serve our customers and help tenants to do business. We created the SM Supermalls Viber community, the largest community of its kind, to help customers find open food tenant in their area. we also created drive-through, personal shopper, and delivery services that made it easier for customers to buy essentials from open tenants, while giving our tenants viable alternatives to Grab, Foodpanda, and Lalamove, all of whom had constrained capacity during lockdowns. When the first lockdown was loosened and the malls were first allowed to reopen starting May 2020, we shifted service to helping business restart. Internally, we prepared our organization to bounce back stronger. We took the opportunity to learn again. We invested more time in coaching each other and learning from our internal DGU learning program and LinkedIn learning modules. We also took time to learn from the experience of our China team in reopening their malls after COVID-19. Next, we worked closely with our tenants to help them reopen after nearly 3 months of being closed. Aside from rental support, we also provided close consultation with our tenants weeks before the actual reopening of our malls, while equipping them with detailed store reopening toolkits to guide them step by step on how to safely and securely restart their businesses. To make reopening viable for our tenant partners, we also needed to regain customer confidence in visiting our malls. We invested in rolling out advanced sanitation technologies in our malls, such as automated hand sanitation machines, UV cleaners, and thermal scanners. We also consistently communicated all these efforts under the theme of safe malling. Part of this was a deliberate strategy to be highly visible in the country's most credible media outlets. We made appearances in news programs, government forums, and public interest shows to make millions of Filipinos nationwide aware about all the work we were doing for customer safety, and to shape positive public perception about visiting our malls. Restarting the economy also means restarting the livelihoods of those affected by the pandemic. With this in mind, we created the SM Riders program for displaced Filipino workers. From repatriated OFWs who were sent home from different parts of the world to public transport drivers, even magicians, event hosts, basketball coaches, our SM Riders program transformed them into personal shoppers for those who could not or would not leave their homes. They paid bills, bought medicines and groceries, food and supplies, and delivered these on bikes, jeepneys, even school buses. 2 years later, the pandemic is still ongoing in different degrees around the world. Our mission to be of service has only been strengthened by these past 2 years. Looking ahead, we are now focused on reimagining how we can serve in a world changed by the pandemic. We anticipate that there will be enduring changes triggered by the pandemic. These changes will come in the form of new customer needs, new stakeholder concerns, both individual and organizational, and new societal realities and dynamics. Some of these changes are already here. Some are just about to emerge. We see these enduring changes as new opportunities to be of service. Our present and our future is focused on reimagining new ways to be of service not only to our employees and our shareholders, but to the entire societal ecosystem. We are reimagining new ways to be of service to the people, to businesses of all sizes, to the local communities that our malls belong to, and ultimately to the country and to the planet we share. At the national level, recovery of the economy is a top agenda. Wide-scale vaccination is key to making this happen. We are actively partnering in the national vaccination drive by hosting vaccination hubs in our malls across the country. Today, over 4 million Filipinos have been jabbed at SM malls. We are also actively driving 100% vaccination of all mall frontliners so that our country can reach immunity threshold sooner rather than later. We are also helping ensure that key government services are not backlogged because of the pandemic. One example of which is the national ID registration. We have made this available in our malls nationwide so that more Filipinos can register safely and quickly. Another example is the COMELEC voter registration. To help Filipino voters register safely, we have made registration hubs available in SM malls across the country. Part of the new reality for business is meeting the customer's expectation you are accessible both online and offline. With this in mind, we have been scaling up our omni-channel services, starting with those of our retail anchors like the SM Store, SM Supermarket, both of whom can be accessed via website, via app, or via a call-to-deliver service. These services are complemented on the ground by a network of drive-through pickup points in our malls. We've also launched our SM Malls Online, our mall's own e-commerce platform. The app brings online the experience of mall shopping on the ground. Through the app, customer can buy from different mall stores with the convenience of having purchases from different stores check out in one delivery with one fee. The economy will recover faster if new businesses are nurtured. So we are also reimagining ways to serve the MSME community. We recently launched a program called the SM Startup Package. The program aims to nurture 100 new MSMEs by giving them a platform to start and grow their business in SM malls. The package includes startup-friendly rates, assistance on location and store spaces, as well as marketing support to build their brand. One of the pandemic's enduring changes will be the continued embrace of inclusive mobility. We are supporting inclusive mobility for all communities by making our malls bike-friendly. With features like dedicated bike lanes, expanded bike parking, bike repair stations, and a helmet depository, we help bikers travel safely while making our malls more accessible. Another enduring change from the pandemic will be the increased consciousness about health and wellness. To serve this longer-term need, we have been creating fitness hubs in our malls, dedicated areas where community members can regularly gather together to exercise. These fitness hubs tackle a diversity of interests. We turned some malls into biker hubs, other malls into venues for jump ropers and yoga practitioners. In one of our malls in Cebu, we even created the city's first ever fitness obstacle course on its roof deck. Related to health and wellness is mental health, a societal concern which has been further amplified by the pandemic. To serve this longer-term need, we are devoting spaces in our malls to support passions beneficial to well-being and mental health. These passions include plant hubs in our malls, parks where co-parents and their fur babies can spend quality time together. And outdoor-themed attractions like camping under the sky in SM City, Baguio. The pandemic has also triggered a long-term rethinking of work arrangements. Working remotely is increasingly becoming an expectation for many workers. With this in mind, we repurpose mall spaces into co-working spaces. We designed these co-working spaces to have everything remote workers need to be productive. Fast Wi-Fi, good lighting, tables, and chairs conducive to focused learning or focused working, easy access to power sockets, and of course, coffee and small bites nearby. Delivery services have provided many Filipinos with new livelihood. As a gesture of appreciation for the delivery personnel who power these services, we've taken the initiative to be of service to them. We've created delivery partner lounges with comfortable seating, water and snacks for riders, and dedicated parking areas that make it easy for riders to quickly get in and out when they pick up orders in our malls. While the pandemic and its effect on people and economies has taken center stage, this does not mean we stop thinking about sustainability of our planet. Especially when you consider that the pandemic has actually brought with it significant environmental impact from increased usage of plastic packaging, face masks, and electronic devices. We recently launched our plastic waste collection program in partnership with the Plastic Credit Exchange. In this program, SM malls are a venue to collect empty and clean dried plastic waste from customers and the surrounding communities. In response to the growing challenge posed by the electronic waste, we also recently launched our electronic waste collection program, where all SM Supermalls nationwide have collection areas for electronic waste. The collected e-waste will be processed and will separate recyclable parts from those that are non-recyclable. Finally, we continue to ramp up our use of renewable energy. Just this August, we completed a series of solar panel projects, giving us a total of 8 solar-powered malls today. In the months ahead, we will be adding 5 more solar-powered malls. The solar panels in these malls are capable of producing 8.9 megawatts of electricity, enough to power almost 6,000 households. We will continue to increase our use of renewable energy in order to achieve our goal of increasing the share of renewable energy in our electricity consumption to 50% by the end of 2022. Yes, 50% by 2022. This is also a support of the Department of Energy's thrust to increase the renewable energy supply component of the country to 35% by 2030. All of these efforts I have just shared with you come from the belief that service is essential during a pandemic. We are thankful that our stakeholders are fully aligned with this belief. Our chairman himself, Mr. Hans C., has expressed this belief on record by saying that in these times, profit is secondary to shared prosperity. That we must help one another rise above these unprecedented times because this is to revitalize our economy for all of us Filipinos. And in the end, this is what the pandemic has been teaching us. We are all interconnected. Our shared fortunes depend on each other. That's why the only way out of this pandemic is together. Thank you and a pleasant day to everyone.
Thank you very much, Stephen. In our fireside chat today, we have a number of excellent speakers. Let me introduce, first of all, Febriany Eddy from Indonesia, the Chief Executive Officer of PT Vale Indonesia. Vale operates with global standards and is fully committed to sustainable mining practices, where institutions and initiatives focused on research and development of innovation projects are being maintained. Let's welcome Febriany Eddy.
Hello, hi everyone. Hi team and Alain. I hope everyone is good health and safe. Thank you for the invitation. It is a great pleasure to join the panel today.
Joining us from the Philippines is Gino Riola. He is the Chief Marketing Officer of Allianz PNB Life. A major life insurer in the Philippines, Allianz PNB Life is the leading provider of variable life products, complemented by a full line of life protection offerings for individuals and institutions. All their products and services are designed to meet the lifetime financial planning, wealth accumulation, and well-being aspirations of every Filipino family. Everyone, Gino Riola.
Good morning, everybody. A pleasure likewise to be here, especially with a very international panel. Thank you.
Rajeev Peshawaria from Singapore is the CEO of Stewardship Asia Center and founder president of Leadership Energy Consulting based in Seattle, USA. Stewardship Asia Center is a thought leadership on-profit organization dedicated to helping businesses and government leaders, investors, and individuals to activate stewardship practices through research, executive education, in-person and online engagement. Let's welcome Rajeev Peshawaria.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Ali. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here. Looking forward to sharing and learning from everybody. Thank you.
Joining us from Malaysia is Jeevan Rajoo, who is the country head of TATA Consultancy Services in Malaysia. TATA Consultancy Services is an IT services consulting and business solutions organization that has been partnering with many of the world's largest businesses in their transformation journey for over 50 years. Everyone, Jeevan Rajoo.
Very good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here with distinguished panelists, and I'm pretty excited about what we're going to discover today, and hope we have a great day today.
Next, let me introduce Vidjongtius from Indonesia, the President Director of PT Kalbe Pharma. Kalbe Pharma recognizes the importance of innovation to grow its business. It has established robust research and development activities in leading-edge generic drug formulation, along with continuous development of innovative consumer and nutritional products. Everyone, let's welcome Vidjongtius.
Thank you for the introduction. Very good morning, Maganda Umaga, to all participants and panelists. It's an honor for Kalbe to share our story in this prestigious event. Thank you.
To represent Stephen Tan on the fireside chat today, we welcome Gino Borromeo, the Vice President for Corporate Planning for the SM Supermalls.
I think you may be on mute, Gino. The session today will be moderated by Rajesh Chhabara from Singapore, the Managing Director of CSR Works International. Rajesh has more than 20 years of consulting and training experience in various industries. Rajesh has founded multiple thought leadership programs to advance sustainability excellence in the region, including the Asia Sustainability Reporting Awards, Asia Sustainability Reporting Summit, and Asia's Top Sustainability Superwomen. Rajesh, welcome and thank you for hosting. Let me turn the space over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you, GRI and SM Investments, for inviting me to moderate this fireside chat. To all attendees, a very warm welcome to this session. Our topic today is the purpose-driven business, the lessons from the pandemic. We are going through the worst pandemic in 100 years. Let's hope that we are at the tail end of the unprecedented human crisis now. With this hope, we have to build back, build better, build stronger, and build sustainable. If you think about it, all our lives are touched by businesses and their products and services 24/7. From the moment we are born, when we go to school, go to university, when we start working, when we go shopping, eating, and when we fall sick, when we are asleep, and even when we die. That's the power of business. So how important is it for everyone that businesses touch our lives with care, compassion, and purpose? And why businesses should care about having a purpose, which is bigger than just profit? Has the pandemic changed how businesses look at their purpose? Welcome to this fireside chat on the purpose-driven business, the lessons from the pandemic. And let's welcome back our amazing panelists. So I have this lovely panel here with me, top leaders from across the region, and we are going to have a very engaging and interesting chat. And I want to remind all our audience here that all of you are welcome, invited to participate in this discussion. Keep sending your questions. We will try to take as many questions as possible. If you want to address your question to a particular panelist, you can indicate so in your question. You can send in your questions through your Q&A chat box or through YouTube live in comments if you're watching over YouTube. And now let's turn to my panelists. So my friends, you know, the one big lesson that I have learned from the pandemic is that you can survive and thrive even when you are locked in with your spouse 24/7 for months and months. Do you disagree?
Yeah.
You disagree?
That's a good one, Rajeev.
Right.
That's a good one.
All right. So you know, we all know that the business language has changed after the pandemic started. Purpose is the new profit. Resilience is the new revenue. Mental health and well-being is the new employee performance. And the rate of infection is the new rate of return. So we are speaking a completely new language. And listening to Stephen just now, a very insightful keynote address, I picked up 3 big points that he made. One was that he discovered what's the bigger why of business. This is a very powerful thought. The second one was that how much we depend on each other. So what a discovery that we have made during the pandemic. And service is essential during a pandemic. And his parting words were that we have to be together. No one is safe until everyone is safe. So we heard from SM Supermalls, things that they did before the pandemic and a host of initiatives that Stephen mentioned that SM Supermall is doing. So I want to ask you, my dear panelists, that what is it that you have done before the pandemic which you feel that has helped you navigate this pandemic stronger with much more resilience? and reducing the pain for you and for your stakeholders. So in order to do that, so let me ask, say one by one. So let's go with Gian. What would you say from? We have two Ginos, by the way. So I'm going to call them. One is Gian from SM Supermalls and Gino from Allianz PNB Insurance. So the first one is building on what Stephen said. Gian, what is it that was done pre-pandemic which has helped Supermalls like survive and thrive?
I think, Rajesh, the one thing that's really served us well pre-pandemic was the acceptance that part of the mall's role in society is to provide a public service, especially in times of calamity and crisis. So earlier, Mr. Stephen Tan talked about that example of how people turn to the malls as a refuge during typhoons and other natural disasters. So that's always been our mindset, even before the pandemic. So I think when the pandemic finally started, it was very easy for us as an organization to embrace our role as providing service in these times. And I think that really helped us in a couple of ways. First, it gave our organization and our people a strong focus throughout the whole crisis. It galvanized us, and it really just forced us to buckle down and get to work. Second, although a lot of the challenges during the pandemic were new and unprecedented, I think we were able to embrace them more easily because of this mindset and way of working that we had cultivated even before the crisis. So I think that idea that we play that kind of role really helped us from the start, the middle, and all the way to the present.
Thank you, Gian. So, I'm very happy to see Febriany because we have a bit of connection there. So we run a program which is annual Asia's Top Sustainability Superwomen, and Febriany, we were honored to have her on our 2019 list as one of the Asia's top sustainability superwomen. So welcome to this panel. Very happy to see you, Febriany. Now this next question is to you, the same question. What do you think you have done, your organization has done pre-pandemic, which has helped you stay stronger during these turbulent times?
Thank you, Rajesh, and hi everyone. Let me try to share a little bit what we have done. I think in mining sectors, right, mining industry, mining companies, every day in our work we are exposed to risk, and therefore generally mining company industry will always put health and safety of our employee and our people, as well as our community, as the top priorities. I mean, our foremost value is life matters most, which means human life cannot be valued by money. So with that concept and principles, we have a lot of health and safety system that's already part of our practices, system and process, as well as the mindset of our people. And therefore, with this experience system process, we are relatively able to cope with pandemic situations, I think, quicker and better. So for instance, right after, even before it globally declared as a global pandemic, we have already started put people work from home. We already started a lot of health protocols, and also we realized that we need to work together closely with community and government. So I would say that EHS focus that we have been practicing today, even before the COVID, help us, be prepared more to deal with the COVID situations. And I also would like to highlight that because we generally will operate in a remote area, there's a lot of dependency from community to us as well as government. So we have to work really closely with government and also as community. A lot of public infrastructures are still run by us. For that reason, I think we have that backbone of collaborations with community and government that help us navigate this pandemic relatively good and well. So far, our business has not been impacted significantly. Even I think we come back stronger. So those pillars are really helpful for us because the pandemic cannot be dealt by private sectors only. We have to work together, private sectors, community, as well as government. So I would say that two key points, the EHS focus as well as our three pillars concept, private, community, as well as government, has helped us really thrive into this COVID crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Febriany. So we are just sharing there SDG number 17, partnerships. So we just heard public, community, and the government. How important is that? Let me go to now Jeevan, TCS and IT powerhouse, one of the most valuable company in the TATA group. That's news I saw, Jeevan. Over to you. So what have you done, what TCS has done to stay strong during the pandemic?
Sure. Thanks, Rajesh. I think the pandemic has caught us all by surprise. And one thing we realized that we started thinking that it's a short-term problem, but eventually became a long-term problem for us all to handle. The first order of business was for us to make sure that whatever service that we provide to our customers are not in any form of jeopardy. So we've got 500,000 employees across the globe. And immediately we roll out a system, what we call secure borderless workspace, where employees of TCS is able to work from home, provide services without compromising SLAs and security to all our customers across the globe from their own homes itself. We immediately shut down our delivery centers, and employees were enabled to provide this particular service from home, and ensuring that the service disruption is far minimized to all our customers across the globe. In the same time, we also emphasized a lot on customer well-being. We realized that this pandemic is something which has disrupted many family units. We took a focused approach in creating minute pods where employees are able to get support system within their own pods itself, with their good friends themselves, in such a way that we monitored the well-being of them. We ensure that each family member is well taken care of. They have enough supplies. They have enough food, enough security for themselves. Now, the other bigger thing that we also did is to make sure that we made a drastic shift with this pandemic. We soon realized that we are able to provide a lot of services in the comforts of our own home. So the organization decided to now start reducing people needing to commute to offices much more frequently, where we only want them to come into the office as and when needed, such a way that we start reducing the carbon emissions that we put out, disrupting a lot of family units. And this has become a much welcome news to many of our employees today. And I think that is the significant difference that we've made. The other more important thing that we've also put great emphasis on the employee well-being. We shifted a lot of the focus that we have on a lot of HR activity and mental well-being. We've created many apps to make sure that employees are tracked, whether they're doing 10,000 steps on a daily basis, so that their mental well-being is monitored. And we have a gamified platform where fellow colleagues can compete against each other for 10,000 steps a day, so that we understand just working at home alone can be a contentious moment for them, and also be a mental problem for them. So we made sure that the employee well-being is well taken care of. So those are the shifts that we made. Over to you, Rajesh.
Thank you, Jeevan. So we heard a lot about caring. So a whole new range of caring for customers and also for employees. So that's emerging as the common theme here. So now I'm going to Gino Riola, Allianz PNB Life. Over to you, Gino.
Rajesh, thank you. I'm actually going to add to those themes as well. I have two answers to your question. The first is really focused on digitalization. Insurance, the industry that we're in, is very much one that is conducted face-to-face. And it was very important for us to accelerate our digital solutions in order to make sure that we were always there, and we bridged this gap between customers on one hand and our life changers, as we call them, that there was this opportunity to engage with each other in a way that was simple, sustainable, and really fast. I would like actually to echo some of Jeevan's points in terms of the other thing that we focused on, which is the safety and wellness of our colleagues. At Allianz PNB, what we did was to make sure that we introduced wellness programs. We have something as simple as mindful Mondays, and it was a good way of starting the week. We introduced yoga sessions. We introduced mental wellness tips and tricks, and that was really received quite well. We have what we call now the new work model, and this is really Allianz's way of embracing the lessons learned from the pandemic. And as mentioned, the two key focus areas would be staff safety, that sense of not just physical safety, but that appreciation for an organization that is being run very well. And as mentioned, that mental wellness, the same points that Jeevan pointed out with regard to ensuring that our staff's wellness was always paid attention to. We introduced a work well packed as an example, and one of them was to ensure that our focus was on output and not necessarily your time online, which went a very long way in terms of our colleagues appreciating that we understood, we heard, and that this new work model works for them.
Thank you, Gino. So let's join Allianz PNB for better work-life balance, or TCS for that matter. So now I'm going to Vidjongtius from PT Kalbe Pharma, and a very important sector to be in these turbulent times. So Vidjongtius, is over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Rajesh, for the questions. I think for first of all, before I saw that the theme for this event is very essential, very important when talking about leaving no one behind. I think it's representing how important and how serious that implementations of the sustainability in every organization has to be done together to ensure no more footprints or no one left behind. It's the same like Kalbe, being a 55 years integrated healthcare company in Indonesia and also some part of ASEAN. Is representing our missions, talking about to improve health for a better life. This is our long-term purpose, long-term goals that underlying all of the strategy activities, starting from, at least we have several that we can share. I think we can start with talking about supply chains, how we can secure the access of health for everybody. This is very important. It has been done since the beginning. And also the second thing is talking about innovation, because through all this innovation culture, we always work together with the all stakeholders, starting from the governments, the university, the community, and also try to develop the ecosystem that can help and speeding up the process of taking care about this access to health for everybody. And also at the same time, it's also because of in the last 4 or 5 years, we also put a lot of investment in the digital platform, because we know that this is a new era, and with this application, we can connect to all parties, including our people, our customers, our doctors, hospitals. And then, yeah, because of the pandemic, during the lockdown condition, for everybody stay-at-home mode, this digital online consultation can be used and serve millions of users nationwide. And we also can provide the online pharmacy, so we can serve the drugs and e-commerce products directly, immediately to our customers. And at the same time as well, we also can use as education to all people about the health protocols and also the vaccination of the COVID-19. So I think this is the way that, in summary, we can see that supply chains, risk management, innovations, if we establish in every organization, can create the resilience and the sustained business ahead. Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you, Vidjan. I think supply chain is a very interesting area. We'll come back to that again to learn more from you. So now I'm going to my next panelist, Rajeev Peshawaria. So Rajeev, you work with lots of companies on the governance and thought leadership, and you observe these companies here in the region and also around the world. What have you noticed? The kind of companies that are staying strong, what do you think they have done before pandemic, which is seeing them through this crisis? Over to you, Rajeev.
Thank you, Rajesh. When there is a crisis that humanity faces or any part of humanity faces, the best of humanity comes out. Everybody feels like they need to help, they need to step up. So in a crisis, we humans are very good at responding in a good way and in a collaborative way, where we forget all about our differences, etc. The question is, how can we evoke that same kind of generosity on a run-of-the-mill Monday when there is no crisis? And we have seen through COVID-19 that the organizations around the world that have built a DNA of being of living that way even before the crisis are the ones who did well during the crisis. You have to believe in a certain set of values and make sustainability, environmental sustainability and social sustainability a part of your business model itself, not think about it when the crisis hits. And so those organizations that had created that DNA did better than others, according to our research.
Thank you, Rajeev. So thanks for sharing your opening comments. So let's see, do we have any question for any of the panelists? If not, then we will continue with our discussion. So we are talking about the purpose-driven business, and Rajeev just now mentioned the DNA, that companies which had this in their DNA all along, they are finding it relatively easier to do better during the pandemic. So let me go back to Jeevan and ask, how do you describe the DNA of, say, SM Supermalls, which people can perhaps see or you can explain?
Yeah, I think in one word, the best way to describe our DNA is service, right? And this has roots in our history. In the early days of SM Supermalls, and even if it was just the SM department store, it was always known as having everything for people. And the meaning of everything expanded from things that are functional for retail to even the things that help the broader community and society at large. And I think that DNA is something that's been seriously inculcated by every member of the organization. We like to joke that we're happy to serve, but we really truly mean that. And that's the same mindset and spirit that we've taken throughout this whole pandemic experience, which has helped the entire organization just naturally come together and put our best effort in everything we do.
Well said. Thank you, Jeevan. I think that's what came through very consistently from what Stephen was talking. Febriany, you are in a very difficult sector, the mining sector, which does not receive always very favorable, say, stakeholder reaction for a variety of reasons and all the legacies which are associated with this sector. As a mining company, we heard you talking about many initiatives and values and principles that you apply to your business and working with the community and the government and other stakeholders. How do you convey and convince stakeholders who are a bit skeptical of the mining sector of your DNA and that business is purpose-driven?
Thanks, Rajesh. Indeed, I think reputations of mining company is not good. But let me bring up about the principle that we have in Vale, Indonesia specifically. I think we cannot avoid the fact that in extractions business, right, you always disturb the ecosystem. You did disturb the planet. So we must realize that in doing our extractions, we need to minimize the impact to the environment. But at the same time, bring the greatest prosperity and benefit from what we took from the earth, right? At the end of the day, human life today, if you see every aspect of life, there is a mining product. So there's a significant dependency on mining. So what we can do is minimizing the environmental impact, at the same time bringing the greatest benefit for all. Our purpose is to improve life and transform the future together. So life is essential, and we know that the future evolves, and we want to evolve together with the future and the world together. So that's our purpose. And I would say that a few examples of what we did, for instance, in minimizing the environmental impact, is a significant reclamations and reforestations program. We run a nursery with the capacity of producing 700,000 indigenous plant seedling every year. We spend a lot of money on reclamation. Today, I would say that we are national benchmark for mining reclamation practices in the country. Having said that, we also have a massive reforestation program. We have ambitions to reforest 10,000 hectares from 2020 to 2025. And then next year, we will pledge another 5,000. So total of 15,000 hectares. That alone will cost us $30 million at least for reforestation. So those are a couple of examples. But at the same time, we also look after the land waste, water consumption, because a lot of public facility in operations like ours depends on Vale to provide. So we must ensure that all of these public services also run sustainably. On the community development side, as I mentioned right at the beginning, we embrace the concept of strategic partnership, because ultimately our goal is to deliver sustainable development goal at the village level. And for that, sustainable development implies collaborations, private sectors, government, as well as community. Missing one element alone will not make sustainable development goals achievable. And therefore, it's very important that we work together. Of course, in reality, there are a lot of challenges, a lot of priorities, different group of people. But I think, that's a few that we try to do in Vale. And recently, we announced our global commitment, Vale Indonesia, including for low carbon, to be the leaders in low carbon economy. And we pledge our commitment to Paris Agreement. So basically, we have to cut down our carbon emissions by 1/3 in 2030 and achieving carbon neutral by 2050. It's extremely challenging, but it must be done. Otherwise, we are not contributing to a better world and not aligned with our purpose.
Thank you. Thanks, Febriany. So now I want to go to Jeevan. What I've been reading is that the adoption of technology has really enhanced because of the pandemic, and what would have otherwise happened, say, 15 years from now, has happened in the just last 15 months or 12 months. So, Jeevan, we would like to hear from you that what you have seen, how technology has helped everyone in this pandemic, this crisis, and where do you see technology can help businesses in becoming better?
Sure. I think the pandemic has also created an ecosystem play where you can't survive alone. There is a need for you to have an ecosystem with your partners, with your customers, as well as with your clients. So there's a definite need for an ecosystem play, whatever you do right now, number one. Number two, we're going to see a lot of adoption of digital happening across the organizations, be it mining, be it in enterprise SMEs, be it in telco companies or the banking companies. We're going to see a huge adoption of digital things. But what we see today from TCS angle is we see a lot of changes happening where people are starting to start initiatives which are meant for digital for good. Initiatives which are called out as technology for good, because they don't want to just do digital initiatives. They don't want to do digital transformation for the sake of transformation. They want to do what is the flip side benefit to the employees, what is the flip side benefit to the customers, and what is the flip side benefit to the stakeholders in general. So we see a new trend emerging, and I think the next 3 to 5 years, you will see many of these digital and technology initiatives will be powered for people and will be powered for stakeholders in general, and as opposed to just purely as a capitalist approach. That's the shift we see that happening right now, and we're going to see everybody embracing digital in some shape or form, whether to order your food, whether to get your maid to come to your house, or whether to really run an entire grid for power companies. So that is going to be the underlying current. But now the flip side is people are going to say, what are we saving, or what are we saving from a carbon emission perspective if we digitize a lot of our process? So that's the conversation that we see happening across all companies, especially the SME companies have embraced it very aggressively with this pandemic, and many large companies who probably took 15 years to do it are doing it in 15 months.
So Jeevan, I'm sorry, I have a very quick follow-up question to you. The massive adoption of technology has also meant that people are working longer because they are at home, and through technology they are connected, and everyone is working longer. And we have had discussion previously here on the mental health and well-being and so on. That's the flip side of technology being so accessible at the same time. How do you see as the technology industry, addressing that?
I think every organization will put a huge emphasis on employee well-being. It's no more a buy and buy. It's probably the first go-to strategy that every organization needs to put in place. Unless and until your employees are happy and well taken care of, you will not be able to serve your customer at large. In Tata Group per se, we always had the employee first, because if we made sure we took care of the employee well-being, whether in terms of physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being, will definitely able to create more value for our customers and indirectly create more shareholder value. But from an operational standpoint, we've now seen a lot of collaboration, a lot of apps that we do to track the well-being of our employees, as well as also push them to do a lot of fitness exercise. We in TCS, we've started 3 big programs. One, what we call fitness for life, to make sure that you really fit. There's nudges coming up in your phone to make sure that you run today or you walk today for 10,000 kilometers. We started monitoring Purpose for Life, which is what you give back to society at large. Can we start monitoring? Can we start measuring it? So that's Purpose for Life. And recently we launched something called Circle for Life. What is your carbon footprint as an individual, as a TCSer, and as a global citizen of this world? We wanted to start to track your carbon footprint also. So these are applications that we have developed to nudge employees such a way that they just don't focus on work, but they have a wholesome and balanced way of living.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that, Jeevan. I'm now going to Gino Riola from Allianz. So Gino, what we have always known that we have a very large population which is underinsured or uninsured. And during this crisis, that has become really a stark reality. So as an insurance company, how do you look at that wider societal problem of protection gap in times of these crises? There may be future impending crisis. I hope that doesn't happen. For example, climate change and all kinds of diseases and health issues that extreme weather patterns might trigger, as scientists are telling us. So how do you look at this problem, and as an insurance company, what do you think is the solution, and what's your company doing?
Yeah, thank you, Rajesh. This is something that really hits us hard as a key player in the life insurance industry in the Philippines. I think worth sharing, for example, personally, in terms of my experiences, I started, and I will date myself, I started in '98, worked for Allianz. And back then, we had a president who actually introduced Vision 2020, as he would put it in Manila, President Fidel Valdez Ramos. And the vision was simple, and that was to increase the insurance penetration rate in the Philippines to 20%. Back then, it was about 1.8, 1.9%. And unfortunately, here we are, a good 20 plus years later, and the insurance penetration in the Philippines is still that number. It is a painful number to look at because we all know the value of financial services and insurance specifically. And that is part of our advocacy. For us, we bring it back to what I shared a while ago, which is digitalization, because it's a way for us to bridge that insurance gap, that purpose of securing the future of Filipino lives, Filipinos who are our target market. And what we've done, as mentioned, is make sure that we have digitalization as a tool. But at the essence of it, of course, is making sure that our products and solutions are both relevant and of significant value. In the Philippines, we still have, unfortunately, the concern of different affordability levels. The awareness and value of insurance is pretty low, which is part, from our perspective, of the reason why that penetration is likewise low. And we take our responsibility very seriously in terms of that education piece. But again, as mentioned, digitalization is a key part of that. I really like what Jeevan has been mentioning, because it's almost like everything that we've spoken about, including, by the way, wellness of our people, are certainly part of what we look at in terms of being true to that purpose in our vision.
Thank you. Thanks, Gino. So, Rajeev, now it's becoming more and more clear that in order to avoid another crisis like this, also to avoid problems like climate change, it's very important that we have almost all businesses with a purpose. Now, as your organization, how do you drive the business community to really understand and implement, live, breathe a purpose and run a purpose-driven business?
There are many aspects to this issue, Rajesh. Above all, we need behavior change in the right direction so that everybody owns the issue and does something about it. And, just to relate an incident, I asked a friend in ESG consulting, what are the biggest drivers of this behavior change? And he replied, 3 things: regulation, lower cost of capital, and executive compensation linked to ESG outcomes. While all of these are good drivers, I think we are missing the point about the most important one. Because if you look at recent examples of excellence in sustainability and ESG, the biggest factor in all that excellence, whether you look at Paul Pullman of Unilever or whether you look at companies like Patagonia, was neither regulation nor cost of capital nor ESG-linked executive compensation. It was genuine leadership intent. Only when top leaders get genuinely serious about sustainability will their organizations make a meaningful contract to the solution. So the first thing they need to do is examine their leadership and governance philosophy and steer their organizations towards steward leadership, where steward leadership says that the organization must believe in collective values like interdependence and long-term view and pursue a collective purpose. And now these values and purpose become part of strategy, part of execution, and part of culture. That's when real change will happen, when at the grassroots level, every employee knows what to do when no one is looking. Unfortunately, what we are seeing is, on the one extreme, there are genuine steward leaders who are doing whatever they can within their organizations to do what's right. On the other extreme are unapologetic greenwashers who are actively deceiving and disinforming stakeholders about what they are doing to contribute to the solution, while actually they're making the problem worse. And then in the middle, you have the blissfully unaware, who are either genuinely unaware or have dug their head in the sand. Or there are window dressers who are more about form than substance. They're making just enough noises to look good, but their intent is not genuine, right? So, in fact, we just published an article on the spectrum of organizations and companies that are how they are responding. Everybody's talking the good talk, but we need more genuine steward leaders like the ones you have on the panel. So the first thing is, again, to look at leadership and governance philosophy, the DNA that I talked about earlier, and see whether your strategy, your organizational architecture, and your culture, it's fully embedded in that. Only then will change happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajeev. I think I tend to agree with that. All the observations that you have made, myself in that, the sustainability consulting thought leadership space, I see that on day-to-day basis. To me, it looks like that purpose is the most important element. So that's the first point. And then once you have the purpose, then the next question is whether your business model is consistent with the purpose. And the third thing is whether you have the right governance in place to deliver on that purpose and the business model. So an interesting point. I have a few questions from the audience. The questions are coming in. So thank you, audience, for sending in your questions. Keep sending more. Here is one question which is meant for Febriany, and I'm going to take that first. So Febriany, there is a question from the audience what's the challenge that you face in engaging with remote communities in this crisis? Because as you also mentioned, many of your communities and stakeholders, they are in far-flung remote areas. So how did you overcome that challenge?
Thanks for the great questions. Our principle is in every challenge lies opportunity. As mentioned before, there's significant dependency in our company from a public infrastructure's point of view. But at the same time, it gave us significant opportunity to engage. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, you go to the next. Sorry, a bit of interruptions. Every challenges lies opportunity. As mentioned, significant dependency, but that dependency actually creates significant ability to influence as well, right? So, for instance, during pandemic, one of the early days of the pandemic, when we tried to, even before government imposed, work from home or reduce mobility, we're trying to reduce number of people work outside. So at that time, I recall we put 2,700 people from home and not working and still paid a salary. But one of the major challenges was actually religious events. So for instance, our community are very religious. So, you have Friday pray for Muslim and then Sunday mass for Christians and Catholic. So we're trying it's a very sensitive topic because it's still with religion, but at the same time, how do you educate and influence people to pray at home, right? So we debate a lot about that. And one of the idea we did was, it comes with persistency and consistency in engaging. So we start engaging community leaders, so informal leaders at the community, use the religious leaders to give the education. At the same time, we see our business leader as a role model for the community. Because we're so dominant in the community, our top leaders in the organizations are typically also role model for community. So all our top leaders are engaging directly with the community and walk the talk, also show example, pray at home. So that was one of the examples of how that becomes successful. I think outside from the crisis, right, major challenges with remote area typically is different priority and interest. You have a lot of group of what we call community can consist of a lot of group of people with different priorities. So I think the most important strategy is actually engaging and also transparently involved in the conversations and basically I think in our community development 5 years program, for instance, it took us forever, a very long time to create the roadmap, but we involve almost everyone in the discussions at the beginning. And after that, you have a governance, you have the routine in place, you have transparency to ensure that everyone can see the progress and measure it themselves. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Thanks, Febriany. So, there's another question which I want to pose to everyone, that one of the changes that we discussed because of the pandemic is, we are adjusted to a new working style. So people are working from home, using more of technology, and spending more time with their families, which has its own challenges and also the benefits. What happens once the pandemic is over? do you think your people will go back? Will you want to see them back in offices as pre-COVID normal? Or do you think some of these changes are nearly permanent? So let me start with Jeevan, TCS, because you said that a lot of people are working from home now.
Thanks, Rajesh, for the question. It's an excellent question. We see a new hybrid happen. We never thought in the past that working from home is a possibility. Now we've proven otherwise. So we see a new hybrid happening for employees who can work from home will be working from home, and employees who need to have more collaboration with their fellow colleagues, they would come to offices and they would have customer engagement as well as peer engagement. So we see that hybrid happening very significantly. But what we also realize is that this new norm will also bring in a lot of new ways of working for all of us. We never thought that we could, get into Zoom calls. We never traveled for the last 1 year over. So we think that's going to be a fairly new way of working, connecting with our customers. And we see that as long as we put customer well-being in front and the employees are well taken care of, this probably be something that we will have a new adoption, a new lifestyle change, so to speak.
Rajeev, can I jump in here real quick on a point I'd like to make?
Yes, Rajeev.
So, I'd like us to think a little bit differently. Rewind the tape to, say, 2017, okay? Can you guess what percentage of the US economy was already in the gig economy in 2017? And the answer is 33%. Now, the same question for Malaysia. As back in 2017, what percentage of the Malaysian workforce was already in the gig economy? And the answer is 33%. So this is not just a Silicon Valley situation. This is right here, right now. My point is, we are all talking about working from home and hybrid as the new normal because of the pandemic. But already, a third of the workforce had discovered long before the pandemic that I can work without a boss and I can work when I want to and when I don't want to. We had reached a level where flexibility and remote working was the norm, and companies had begun to realize that if I don't provide that same kind of freedom and trust to full-time employees, I'm going to lose them to the gig economy, right? So now what the COVID-19 has done has only accelerated the acceptance of that problem, right? Earlier, people were saying, no, this is not going to apply to me and this, that, and the other. Why? Because 100 years of management, leadership, and governance theory has all been based on one idea: maximize control over resources that are human. And you can only control them when they're on the same floor with you. What we need to do is rewrite leadership and governance books and teach the world that the new normal is not a hybrid or whatever the pandemic says. The new normal is to lead and create higher productivity with freedom and trust rather than with control.
Higher productivity with freedom and trust. Thank you, Rajeev. We are doing the same thing. For us, it was unimaginable that we will have people or colleagues working remotely from different countries, and there were a lot of issues with that. But now we have a lot of our colleagues here at CSR Works who are working from different places, and it's working very well. But let's not be biased towards working from home being a kind of very doable or easy method. Let's go to Vidjong, because that's where we will hear that what it means to a sector which depends on manufacturing and manufacturing plant, where people have to go to office and they still have to work from the office. Vidjong, what's your take on working from home, and when people are not able to come to office, there are lockdowns and they have to stay home? What kind of challenge that poses to you? And also the second question is that as more and more people perhaps start preferring working from home or a gig kind of economy, what do you think will be the implication for manufacturing-driven sectors like yours?
Yeah, I think this, thank you for the question. I think we see that, of course, the change is coming now. Being a manufacturer and also with very heavy distribution and logistics, because we a lot of dealing with physical works, and then the moving from one side to the other side. So I think in terms of the, we always try to introduce the flexibility in terms of hours. Of course, what Rajeev mentioned about the productivity is one of the very important things, that how we translate anything that if we can do it in the partial or in terms of shift, in terms of team, separate team together in the one team to the other team, so we can manage the productivity even during the pandemic situation, not only because of the health protocol, but also to make sure that the availability of the products or the health services is still there from the offline or even the online activities. So I think what we do now, we will continuously improve that, is how to combine between the flexible hours in the office side, in the support side, but also at the same time, how to manage the time shifting teams and people in the manufacturing and the distribution and logistics to minimize the impact of the health for the employees. Because like mentioned by Rajesh as well, I think well-being for the employee is very important. They have to be healthy, they have to be happy to make sure that the productivity is there. So you can call it as a hybrid models, or you can call it as a flexible hours. But I think the important thing is the prepare the system combined between the offline, which is direct to the customer or direct to the outlets, to the pharmacy outlets, combined with the online using the technology, and we can at the end we can continue serve the patient and also the health community. Back to you, Rajesh.
Thank you, Vidjong. So you are also looking at a hybrid model. So that's very interesting. I also wanted to ask you, Vidjong, one more question. Yeah. That in the pandemic, we have seen massive disruptions to supply chains, and for a sector like yours, as critical, you have quite a complex supply chain. How have you navigated that supply chain problem, and what's your advice for others who have to deal with a complex supply chain to make sure that their goods and services reach their customers safely and on time?
Yeah, I think that's right. Supply chains, it's not new for the any business or any organization. I think we have been dealing with this supply chain issue since a long time ago. For example, like in Indonesia itself, that everybody understand that the healthcare industry mostly are still depend on the imported raw material. This is one thing is happening up to now. So the governments and also the industry try very hard how to reduce this risk for this to ensure the supply side. So therefore, for Kalbe, since 2005, back to 16 years ago, we started to build, we call it as a strategic sourcing with our main vendors through long-term partnership agreement. This is one thing that I also heard then from Mr. Stephen in the beginning say about the long-term partnership, long-term relationship arrangement is very important. The same like in the supply chain. For example, so we built that some kind like we call it a vendor development program together with Kalbe and also these vendors, so we can create a value added, or can say win-win activities, not just by transaction, buy and sell, but we can create strengthening the value when we can do some development program, development of the formulation of a certain products, or developments of the design of the packaging and so on. So this is one concrete example that during pandemic, at least we can minimize the impact. Of course, there are some challenges in terms of the logistics side, but I think we can minimize the impact. And one of the good example as well, We also build, we call it as an end-to-end ecosystem. This is talking about the herbal products, because herbal product in Indonesia is widely used. So we create an end-to-end collaboration with all the farmers in Indonesia. We take one example, like for the red ginger. So we have now we are building more than 10,000 farmers, how to educate the farmer community to build this kind of the sustainability of the supply. This is not only talking about supply for Kalbe, but also for the all industry, especially for the red ginger products. So I think this is the way that one or two example here, it'll be continuously building up. When you're talking about collaboration, this is the real concrete example. Collaboration, it's bring synergy, bring a long-term partnership, and we can minimize the shortage of the raw material due to any happen, even like COVID or in the future. Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you. Thanks, Vidjong. All right. So I know that one of the worst affected sectors is retail, F&B. I guess the only sector which is more affected than that is KTV lounges and massage parlors and so on. So let me go to Jeevan and ask that in this new normal, when people are talking about working from home, the hybrid model, as well as frequent lockdowns, and looks like it's going to continue for some time, and then a lot of e-commerce and people ordering online, how do you see, your sector coping up with that and still staying true to your purpose, staying profitable, and still maintaining your service DNA that you mentioned?
Yeah, good, very good question, Rajesh. I think underpinning that question is this underlying narrative that when you say new normal, it's a choice between physical store presence and online store presence. But I think what we've seen in many countries around the world, and including the Philippines, that it's not either or. Both aspects need to coexist, the physical and the digital. And it's really because of a fundamental truth about people, which is people still need spaces to congregate and come together as communities. And that has been there for our focus. How can we then best provide spaces for communities to gather, whether in the physical space, in the digital space? So I know earlier we talked a lot about hybrid working arrangements. For the retail industry, we're taking a similar hybrid approach. So we look at the mall as both a physical space and a digital space, and those two worlds complement each other. So as a concrete example of that, the efforts we're doing on SM Malls online, we treat as a digital extension of the physical mall. Everything you can do on the ground, you can do exactly online. So in doing that, we give customers choices. When they're feeling a little nervous and less secure, they can go online. If they're feeling a little more confident, our physical malls are ready for them. But it's really making sure that at the end of the day, in whatever shape or form the customer wants us to be in, we will be there ready to serve them. And that's really the way we're looking at the future moving forward.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeevan. So the next one question is for Gino. Then I'm looking at more questions coming from the audience. So Gino, now what you have learned and also what your sector has learned from the COVID pandemic crisis in terms of underwriting the risk and how accurate was your underwriting and so on. What have you learned from this crisis which you think will be useful for perhaps the next impending crisis, which is climate change?
Well, two points first to my co-panelists. I really wish we were doing this together. I'm learning a lot from all of you, and this has been a beautiful conversation. Gino, I'm sorry you're now called Jeevan, but we all know you're Gino. So for us, I think there was a point made about for every crisis comes an opportunity, and it really has been the escalation of the natural awareness for protection and health. I think we all come from countries where the health space is a challenge for a lot of our countrymen and women. In the Philippines in particular, we know that you do have a health challenge in your hands if all you're reliant on is what is provided by the national sector or the public sector. So it's that awareness that we really have been maximizing in terms of building tools to educate the population without necessarily even selling anything. You start first and foremost with, as we're discussing sustainability, the importance of financial wellness and awareness. And we at Allianz PNB, for example, have gone a long way towards making sure that awareness and education is available. So that is how we've participated in that cause in terms of making sure thereafter the relevance of the solutions are there, and that the prospects and customers that we would love to work with are aware likewise that the solutions are made specifically for them.
Thank you, Gino. I think the time is running quite fast. There are a lot of questions also coming in now towards the end, and we have just a few minutes left. But this is one question I think is quite important, and I want to pose this to all speakers, whoever wants to chip in. So this question is about the implication on sustainability of educational institutions. So what are the important skills and knowledge that graduates from Asian universities must have to start their career, I guess, and survive and build their careers in times of crisis? So it's open to all of you. Just can have a very quick take on that. What are the skills and knowledge going to be important for graduates from Asian universities who are graduating this year or maybe the next year? Nobody wants to go first, so let's
Rajesh, let me take the question.
All right.
In Malaysia, we run a program called Seed Lab, which is really a collaboration with our partner to create social enterprises in Malaysia, and we want to address the youth unemployment in Malaysia. So one of the criteria that we when we interview these fresh graduates, we look out for three very distinctive values in them, over and above obviously a degree and understanding and stuff like that. One is creativity. How do they demonstrate and how do they come out very strong from the angle of creativity? Number two is passion. Are they really passionate about, or are they just looking for a job? That's number two. Number three is empathy. Do they have empathy for the community, for their fellow colleagues, and for the need? Or are they just purely I want to get rich, and because I want to be rich, I want to join you? So we've really classified that into creativity, passion, and empathy. And that has been, and very funnily, we put that as criteria for all these fresh graduates. And no matter how high your score is, these three criteria must stand out to us. And we've picked up some very talented youngsters today in this particular program that we run. And we're now working with them to really start creating startups for social enterprises, and they are going to storm Malaysia, so to speak. So these three criteria would be the main hallmark, and judging from the new way of working, employees are going to see that, whether that's coming up very strongly in the conversations they have with prospects.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeevan. So creativity, passion, and empathy. One of the largest employers, I think, in the part of the world saying that. So that's very useful. I'll just ask one more. Who wants to chip in? Just one more speaker before I start wrapping up, because we don't have much time left.
Maybe I'll chip in, Rajesh, if you don't mind. I want to pick up on something that Rajeev talked about earlier, which is sometimes there's this tendency to window dress and greenwash. And I think that's really important when you talk about the world we live in today. And a huge part of sustainability is having access to information and knowledge. And unfortunately, the irony of our time is there's more information available to everyone, more than ever. But at the same time, there's also a lot more misinformation that's available to people more than ever. And that amount of information can be abused when you talk about sustainability. So I think against the context, a really important skill for university graduates moving forward is the ability to read data properly and to exercise critical thinking. And for all of us in industries, that's really important for us because it keeps us honest, keeps us accountable. We appreciate that. So, I would encourage future leaders, just, keep an open mind, be very critical of institutions in industries, keep us honest and accountable. We need that just as much.
Just to add to your point, I think, universities are realizing that they have their role to play. And again, the focus is on the science of sustainability, on giving people, to your point, even more information that this is what is at stake and this is how hard it is. And these are some of the science-based solutions. These are some of the other, numerical solutions, regulatory solutions, financial solutions. In addition to all of that, what universities really need to focus on is redefine what leadership means for the 21st century. To your point that, and the point that Jeevan made, that this idea of empathy, this idea that I don't want to just get rich for the sake of getting rich. There's too many people today who are talking about, what do you want to do? What's your purpose in life? Oh, I want to be the next unicorn. Is that your purpose in life? What do you want to give to the world by doing that? I think that's the kind of leadership ethic and governance ethic that has to come into university curricula. And good news is that many of the top universities are already instilling that into their curricula. I speak at and teach at several business schools around the world, and I can tell you that some of the good ones are really, really beginning to incorporate that. But we need to have that at the high school level. We need to have that at the undergrad level, not just at the master's.
Thank you, Rajeev. So I think we have to start wrapping up, even though I see some more questions coming up and it's really warming up now. I wish we had more time. So we had a fantastic discussion. A lot of points came out during the discussion. I just want to go around the room and ask all of my panelists, what's your key takeaway today, when the key question that we posed was the purpose-driven business, the lesson from the pandemic. So in your view, what's your key takeaway today? If you can just briefly, concisely tell us that what's the big key lesson and also key takeaway from today's discussion that you are going away with. Let's start with Vidjon.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is the time that we have to be optimistic. This is one thing, and we have to share this optimism, the spirit, the mindset, to energize the whole organization, internally or externally. And of course, we cannot do it alone. Yeah, we definitely need hand in hand together to overcome all these challenges. So everybody have to start something, no matter a small step or big steps. I think together means building collaborations with all stakeholders, with a strong and consistent commitment, and also strong leadership. With the purpose-driven organization, I'm sure that together we can fulfill our wish to save our next generation. Thanks, Rajesh.
Thank you. Thanks, Vidjon. Rajeev.
Thank you, Rajesh. A couple of points. One is everybody today is talking about purpose-driven organization. And I have a lot of CEOs who talk about they're trying to transform our organization to be purpose-driven. My question to these CEOs is, what do you mean? For the last 25, 50 years, your company existed, you didn't have a purpose? Of course, you had a purpose. There's no organization that exists without a purpose. The question is, what kind of purpose was it? The key point that we may be underserving is that purpose comes from values. When I decide what my purpose is based on what is valuable to me. So it's not so much about, the buzzword of purpose, but which values are driving our business. So only when we look at a values transformation can we look at a purpose-driven transformation. So that's point number one. Secondly, the final thought I'd like to leave us with is this. The challenge of 21st century business leadership is to find business models that drive profitable growth for shareholders, addressing the very challenges humanity is facing. If you can do that, then you're worthy of the awards that are going around. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajeev. Jeevan.
I see a shift from valuation to values. Organizations will gradually move away from valuations to value and profit to people. That shift, we will see that gradually happening. We already, I mean, in TATA Group, we've been living that whole value system that we ingrained in all of us, and I think the net result of it is if you move your valuation focus to value focus, you'd be surprised your valuation increases automatically. And that's a science which is a phenomenal science, which I hope all CEOs at some point in time will embrace. And that's how TATA Group per se has grown over the last 150 years.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next one we have actually overshot. So the next one I want to go to Gino and then Jeevan. Gino, to you.
It really is echoing what my colleagues have pointed out. I mean, starting and making sure that your purpose is there. I think what has been very insightful for me is the importance of making sure that that is properly communicated with both your employees and your customers. I think there has been the point made about all of us being together in this crisis, and that together with our stakeholders, we can go through this together. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeevan.
For me, what's been interesting listening to everyone, from the stories that have been shared and even the words that were used, I did not hear too much corporate speak. A lot of it was very human. And to me, that's the biggest takeaway. This is not simply a corporate topic. This is about people and humanity. So let's keep the focus on that. And I think that's really where it all starts.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeevan. Now, the last word, as I always prefer by a woman. A woman's word should be the last word for everyone. So, Febriany, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rajesh. I learned a lot today's session. Thank you, everyone, for your sharing. So, the last word, purpose-driven is easy to say, but very difficult in reality to practice consistently, especially during crises like now. And after the crisis, there will be a lot of pressure to corporations and business to chase short-term economic benefits still. Even today, I felt that pressure. So it's very important to stay true to the purpose and value and be persistent to fight for what you think is truly needed to create a better world. Every one of us, whatever role we play in community, in family, as well as at work, we have a role to play. Let's really create this world a better world for the future generation and ourselves. But I think it's time to take action, not just commitment. Passions and genuinity is very important, but that means nothing if we don't take action. So let's try to contribute whenever we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Febriany. So it's time for action. That's very powerful word. So let's move from commitment to action. Well, I won't take much time to summarize. I'm assuming that recording will be available later for people. But what I'm picking here is that, we are talking a lot about purpose, partnership, collaboration, and service, and from value to values. I think these are very powerful words. If we can translate these into action, we will definitely be in a very different world living even now and the post-COVID. I want to take this opportunity to thank all my lovely, amazing panelists for your time here today with us, for all the comments and everything that you have shared. All of you are senior business leaders. You're very busy, and I'm sure there is a lot more that we could ask you and we could hear from you. It's so, but thank you so much, and I hope that our audience, they loved it, what they have heard, and I enjoyed it. I really love, and perhaps I'll like to continue this conversation even after this session with all of you. I also want to take this opportunity to invite Ambassador Gaschen on stage for a group picture, which, in Asia, and a session is not complete if you don't have a group picture. And your meal is not complete if you don't have a picture of the meal and a picture of people who are having their meal. And just on an interesting note, I was eating in a restaurant in London, and the Italian restaurant, and we, as usual, we asked, can you help us take a picture? But we had already eaten our meal. And he did that. And then after that, he said, you know what, from my experience, Chinese, they take picture before they start eating. And Indians, they ask for a picture after they have eaten. So I don't know what that means. So thank you, everyone, again. Thank you, Ambassador. We really benefited from your words. I just want you to smile and pose for this picture. And let's say after that, goodbye. Thank you. So thank you, everyone. And over to Tim.
And congratulations for the passionate.
Thank you very much, Rajesh, and to all the panelists. That was a fascinating session, and it will indeed be available on recording afterwards. It's always a little dangerous to try and summarize after everyone's already given their own good summaries. So, let me just tell you some of the words that I wrote down when I was listening, and I was trying to capture the essence of the different speakers. And this list is quite fascinating because the words that kept coming up were things like responsible, values, trust and freedom, steward leadership, critical thinking, empathy, partnership with vendors, wellness of our people, looking after our communities and our customers. Big theme was service, and purpose and values were overriding words. And I didn't write down, or I didn't even hear the words share price or profit, size, financial returns, ROE, or being number one. That's amazing when you have such august business leaders and such rich topics, that this was a focus on values and importance. And that wasn't the way we set this up. This was, what do we do after the pandemic? But everybody was on the same page. So that leads me to a couple of things. One is just how tremendously inspiring that is. And secondly, this pandemic has led to a shift. That's what Rajesh started out with. But just characterizing the entire discussion supports everything he said. We have had a shift in thinking, and now we need to take it into action. Ali, did you have any additional reflections?
Yeah, like you, I also found the discussion very dynamic and interesting. I feel like after listening to all these people, I am a bit smarter. And just to share with you, the reason why GRI organizes this type of events is, of course, to impart knowledge. But for me, it's also quite selfish because I learn a lot from these things. But my takeaway is quite different. It's good that everything that has been discussed, since yesterday, all ties up. But the nerd in me brought up, several theories and principles that I've learned when I was in university, and I'm glad I listened to my professors and my teachers. So Stephen, started the conversation quite well. He captured the essence, what everyone is doing. Everything is interconnected, which is, if we go back to our lessons in physics, that is the singular, all-encompassing theory of physics, that everything is interconnected. So everything that we do has an impact on someone else. And this ties up also to the opening remarks of the ambassador. He talked about social contract. I studied political science, so I do remember Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So he talked about social contract, which basically says men are free, and yet everywhere they are in chains. So what basically it means is that man's freedom is relative, but man's freedom is relative because he cannot endanger everyone else's freedom in the pursuit of his own freedom. And this connects to what Rajeev pointed out, why ESG is taking is what's driving ESG among corporates now is regulation. So that's why we still need government to make sure that everyone is behaving responsibly and sustainably. And the last one, I remember what Febriany talked about. Finding opportunities and challenges, and this reminds me of the theory of creative destructionism by Joseph Schumpeter. So it basically just says you destroy one thing to create new one, and that is that's the opportunity that this pandemic has also given to us. So yeah, that's the nerd in me. So I'm sure you have your own favorite sound bites and takeaways, maybe not as nerdy as mine. So please write them on the comment box below, and we will try to read them later on.
Thank you. I'm tempted to follow up with an even more academic discussion, but we'll do that offline. I did find it interesting how in this whole discussion about a social contract, we're trying to reach our way towards it, a new one, and the words that people use I find very, very different and powerful. Thank you. Agree with all your points. Session 4 after lunch will start promptly at 1:30. Our topic for this afternoon, the fourth and final session, is starting the journey to credible net zero target achievements. And our keynote speaker for this will be Federico Piqui Lopez.
So at this point, we will go on a lunch break. So for our guests in Zoom, please tune in 15 minutes before. While those watching us on live stream, be ready by 1:30 this afternoon. So see you later and have a good lunch.
Thank you very much. We will reopen the social media live stream at 1:25 p.m.